Because just like the sun, relatively speaking, that renders all objects seeable.
I wanted to broadcast just this bit.
So you, I, this open, empty presence, renders all experience knowable. In fact, we don't really see objects, relatively speaking, illumined by the sun. We just see reflections or modulations of the sun's light, appearing as a multiplicity and diversity of color. In the same way, we don't really know the objects of the mind, body, and the world. We just know our knowing of them. All we know, all that is known, is the knowing of experience. And you are that knowing. All that is ever known is a modulation of our own knowing presence, modulating itself in the form of thinking, sensing, and perceiving, and seeming to become a mind, a body, and a world. But we never actually know a mind, a body, and a world as they are normally conceived. We just know our knowing of them. And this knowing, the substance of our experience, the only substance of our experience, is ourself. In other words, we know ourself alone. Awareness knows nothing other than itself. Be knowingly this open, empty, luminous presence of awareness. We don't need to do anything special to make this happen. Above all, we don't have to manipulate the mind in any way whatsoever to be this presence of awareness. This presence of awareness, which is simply our self, what we refer to when we say I, is ever present. Just check this in your own experience. Nothing that I am saying this evening, there is nothing that cannot be checked in your own direct experience right now. I bring no special knowledge to this meeting. I don't have a store of knowledge which I am disseminating. I'm just, within the limits of language, trying to describe the current experience. Ask yourself, do I know anything other than now? Try to experience the not now. Try first to experience the past. It's easy to experience a thought about the past. But what about the actual past to which this thought refers? Try to experience that. Can you step into the past? Can you go 1 second into the past? Or 1 second into the future? Thought can go there. But what about you? Really try to go there to make sure that this is not just an interesting philosophical conversation, but that it is actually your experience. that the past and the future are never experienced. And if the past and the future are never actually experienced, they are only thought about. And that thought about the past and the future is always now. If this past and future are never experienced, what does that say about time? Time is a movement between a non-existent past towards a non-existent future. It's a theory, a necessary and valid theory, but a theory that doesn't refer to the reality of our experience. Nobody has ever or could ever experience time. When I say nobody, I mean yourself, awareness, the only one that knows or is aware. When I arrived off the plane from London in Washington, D.C. last weekend before coming here, the friend who picked me up asked me how the flight was, and she said, "How long did it take?" And I experienced thought being cranked up like an old motor, a little resistant to get going. And for a moment, I could feel the cogs of thought almost moving, trying to work out how much time the flight had taken. Because in my experience, it had been now all the way. I had never left London. London had left me. I had never got onto an aeroplane, a flow of sensations and perceptions that thought abstracts and calls a body in an aeroplane, flowed through me. And I never arrived in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. arrived in me, or at least the cluster of perceptions that thought calls Washington, D.C. arrived in me. In the same way, nobody ever walked into this room, and nobody is sitting on a chair, and nobody is listening to a talk. A colourful flow of sensations and perceptions appears in awareness. But awareness never goes anywhere or does anything. It is always here and now, not here a place and now a time. Here, this dimensionless, now this timeless presence of our own being. That is our experience, whether we recognize it or not. Now the mind may feel a little rebellious when it hears this. It may say, yes, 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 that's true, but there is an undeniable continuity to my experience. And this undeniable continuity would seem to be evidence of time. Where does this felt sense of continuity come from? All we know of the mind is the current thought or image. And thoughts and images are intermittent. The body is known through sensation. and all sensations are intermittent. All we know of the world is perception, that is, sights, sounds, tastes, textures, and smells. In fact, nobody has ever experienced a world as such, a world as it is normally conceived to be. We just know the current perception. And all perception is intermittent. So if the so-called mind, body, and world are intermittent, from where does this felt sense of continuity come from? It comes from the only thing, if we can call it a thing, that is truly continuous, or in fact not continuous, but ever present now in our experience, and that is our own being, the presence of awareness. The presence of awareness is the only thing that is known to be ever present. Now the mind knows nothing of awareness because the mind only knows apparent objects. So when the mind looks at experience to find what it is that accounts for continuity, it cannot see awareness. And so it manufactures a substance called time to account for the continuity of experience. In other words, continuity in time is what eternity looks like when viewed through the narrow slit of the mind. Permanence in space is what the infinite, unlimited nature of awareness looks like when viewed through the narrow slit of the mind. Continuity and permanence are pale reflections at the level of the mind of the true, eternal and infinite nature of awareness, that is, of our self. What else can we say about ourself from our actual experience? Which means right now, what can we know for certain about ourself? Not what thought may tell us about ourself, but what we actually know in this moment, derived only from our experience of ourself. Ask yourself, can I, this open, empty, knowing presence, can I be agitated? Thought can be agitated. Sensations of the body can be agitated. The world can be agitated. But what about you, the one that knows the apparent mind, body, and world? Can you, this open, empty presence, be agitated? See, in your experience right now, that you are, and this of course is just an image, are like an open, empty space, such as the space of this room. Nothing that appears within this room can agitate it. We are all sitting peacefully now, but if we were to stand up and start dancing or fighting, would the space of this room become agitated? You are like that. You, I, the presence of awareness, are undisturbable, imperturbable. We don't need to become imperturbable, and this undisturbability of ourself is not dependent upon the condition of the mind. Right now, you, awareness, are utterly imperturbable, and for this reason, another name for ourself is peace. Peace is not a quality that ourself has, it is what ourself is. Not peace of mind. Minds are more or less agitated. This peace that passeth understanding, that is not of the mind. It doesn't have to be sought. It is not hiding in the background of experience. This very awareness that is seeing, hearing, knowing, is pure peace itself, shining in all experience, however apparently agitated that experience may be. Ask yourself, can I, this presence of awareness, ever lack something? Thoughts can say that something is missing. Feelings can say that something is missing. But what about you? Without referring to thought or feeling, is there the slightest motive in you to avoid the now and replace it with the not now? See that in yourself, this presence of awareness, there is not the slightest impulse or possibility to avoid the now. And what do we call this absolute absence of resistance to the now? The absolute absence of resisting what is and seeking what is not. What is the common name we give to this? It is called happiness. We all know that when we are happy, we are by definition not resisting the now and seeking in the past or the future. By happiness, of course, I do not mean a pleasant state of the mind or the body. I mean this absolute impossibility of ourself ever to resist or seek. To resist what is and to seek what is not. So happiness, like peace, is just another name for ourself. It is not a quality that ourself has. It is what ourself is. What else can we say for certain, based on this current experience about ourselves? When I was driving here, or being driven here, the day before yesterday, from the airport in San Francisco, I was looking in the wing mirror of the passenger seat, and I noticed the words inscribed at the bottom of the wing mirror. And they said, "Objects in the mirror are closer than you think." A statement of pure non-duality. objects that appear in the mirror are closer than you. How close to a mirror are the objects that appear in it? Or is it all just mirror? All we know of the apparent mind is the experience of thinking. And thinking is just a modulation of yourself, a modulation of knowing or awareness. All we know of the apparent body is the experience of sensing. And sensing is a modulation of your self-awareness. In yourself, this presence of awareness, there is not the slightest impulse or possibility to avoid the now of the mind. Now. Try to experience the not to be this presence of awareness.
This shit's taking forever.
This presence of awareness,
Something tells me this shit's
unconditionally
repeated.
and indiscriminately, to all appearances of the mind, body, and world. Like empty space, you have no mechanism inherent within you
Sure glad I wrote all these
that can
down.
resist any appearance.
Oh, cool.
Well, that's no better a solution than any of the others, is it? So, in the end, have we learned anything from this look at why the world turned out the way it did that's of any use to us in our future? Something, I think. That the key to why things change is the key to everything. How easy is it for knowledge to spread? And that in the past, the people who made change happen were the people who had that knowledge, whether they were craftsmen or kings. Today, the people who make things change, the people who have that knowledge, are the scientists and the technologists who are the true driving force of humanity. And before you say, what about the Beethovens and the Michelangelos? Let me suggest something with which you may disagree violently. That at best, the products of human emotion, art, philosophy, politics, music, literature, are interpretations of the world that tell you more about the guy who's talking than about the world he's talking about. Second-hand views of the world, made third-hand by your interpretation of them. Things like that, as opposed to this. Know what it is? It's a bunch of amino acids, the stuff that goes to build up a worm or a geranium or you. This stuff's easier to take, isn't it? Understandable, got people in it. This scientific knowledge is hard to take because it removes the reassuring crutches of opinion, ideology, and leaves only what is demonstrably true about the world. And the reason why so many people may be thinking about throwing away those crutches is because, thanks to science and technology, they have begun to know that they don't know so much, and that if they are to have more say in what happens to their lives, more freedom to develop their abilities to the full. They have to be helped towards that knowledge that they know exists and that they don't possess. And by help towards that knowledge, I don't mean give everybody a computer and say, help yourself. Where would you even start? No, I mean trying to find ways to translate the knowledge, to teach us to ask the right questions. See, we're on the edge of a revolution in communications technology that is going to make that more possible than ever before. Or, if that's not done, to cause an explosion of knowledge that will leave those of us who don't have access to it as powerless as if we were deaf, dumb, and blind. And I don't think most people want that. So what do we do about it? I don't know. But maybe a good start would be to recognize within yourself the ability to understand anything, because that ability is there, as long as it's explained clearly enough. And then go and ask for explanations. And if you're thinking right now, what do I ask for? Ask yourself if there's anything in your life that you want changed. That's where to start. And I don't think most people want that. So what do we do about it? That's where to start. Of a revolution in communications technology that is going to make that more possible than ever before. Or, if that's not done, to cause an explosion of knowledge that will leave those of us who don't have access to it as powerless as if we were deaf, dumb, and blind. And I don't think most people want that. So what do we do about it? I don't know. But maybe a good start would be to recognize within yourself the ability to understand anything, because that ability is there, as long as it's explained clearly enough. And then go and ask for explanations. And if you're thinking right now, what do I ask for? Ask yourself if there's anything in your life that you want changed. That's where to start.
So it's absolutely simple what I have to say to you. It's what my teacher said to me. And I'm still deeply discovering the reverberation of that. And it's simply stop looking for what you want. Not cynically stop looking for what you want. Because there's a way of stopping looking for what you want in resignation and cynicism and closing down. But innocently, openly, stop looking for what you want in this moment. Not tomorrow when you have it. But in this moment, to take one moment, whatever it is you want, however mundane or profound, and just stop looking for it. And you will find more than what you could ever want. Because more than what can be wanted is already who you are. It's too simple to be grasped. absolutely, completely realizable. If, and it is a huge if, of course, you are willing to give up your hope that what you want will be found in the next thought, or the next activity, or the next day, or the next man, or the next woman, or the next teaching, or the next experience. So that's huge. That's the challenge. And I've blessedly traveled to Australia to challenge you in that directionless direction. It's so simple that it has to be said over and over, because it just slips right by the mind. And if it's said over and over and in enough ways and then not said, it can just be revealed. Not as something new, but as something absolutely fresh. Not new, but fresh. Who you are is not new, but it is always fresh. Who you think you are is old and dead. And we just keep trying to think it a little better, squeeze some life. Is that clear? It is? Because that's really the basis of what I have to say. It's not a teaching. It's not a belief system. It's not a way to live your life. It's not a should stop. It's not an if you stop, you will be rich and famous and universally loved and never have a sad moment. None of that, I promise. But if you're willing to investigate for yourself without believing it or learning it or hoping to get something from it, just a pure investigation out of the natural curiosity of the human mind, just to investigate for yourself, what is here when I stop trying to get anything? And how much of that is here? And where does that begin? And where does that end? And then the question, am I willing to trust that? And then the challenges get very big. But we'll get to that later. Any questions about what I just said? Want me to say it again? You already are everything you want, only maybe not in the way you imagine what you want. And it's that imagination itself that keeps you from discovering that you already are everything you want. So if you just take this evening as an experiment to give up any imagination, any image of what you need to be totally fulfilled, just give it up. It's just an image, just a thought. Maybe a spiritual thought, maybe a worldly thought, a relationship thought, a career thought. Just give it up. And directly discover what's here, unthought, unimagined. How's that? Good.